Digital India. I'll make it clear to you. Let's first settle down. All concerns will be addressed in a very effective manner. I know there have been certain decisions taken. I'll tell you what it is. First of all, welcome you all to this press conference on Union Budget 2016-17. Sir, on behalf of Press Information Bureau and all the media persons assembled here, my sincere congratulations to the Honorable Finance Minister, Shri Arun Jaitley ji, and his team of officers for presenting the Vikaska budget in Parliament today. Sir, we are privileged to and honored to have you with us. I extend a warm welcome to you, sir. I extend a warm welcome to the Honorable Minister of State for Finance, Shri Jayan Sinha ji. My warm welcome to Shri Ratan P. Vattal, Finance Secretary and Secretary Expenditure, Shri Shaktikanta Das, Secretary Economic Affairs, Shri Neeraj Kumar Gupta, Secretary Disinvestment, Ms. Anjali Chipduggal, Secretary Financial Services, Shri Hasmukh Adhia, Secretary Revenue, Dr. Arvind Subramanian, Chief Economic Advisor. Friends, I really request you to stick to the points of order. It will help when you ask a question, you don't wrap in too many questions in one question so that all your friends will get an equal opportunity. And when you want to ask a question, kindly raise the placards kept in front of you. I will call out the number. Friends, the Ministry of Finance is first to go green, took a decision to print only a minimum number of copies of the budget. Therefore, this time the hard copies of the budget document are not being distributed to media persons. We have very few copies because if we distribute to some and not to others, you know what you all will do. However, all the budget documents are uploaded on the websites of the Ministry of Finance and Press Information Bureau. You can download them, you can look at them, use them as appropriately as possible. And lastly, I thank you for switching off your mobiles or keeping them in silent mode. Now I give it over to the Honorable Minister.
Well, thank you very much for all being here. I'll certainly get an opportunity just now to interact with you. But before I do that, I think all the secretaries and the Chief Economic Advisor are also here. So they've been working overtime on all the budget proposal. So I'm first going to request each one of them to make a very brief comment in relation to the subject matter which is within their respective department. I think Mr. Vattal can start.
Thank you, sir. So we all heard your speech in the Parliament. I will just make a few points about three key areas which will be perhaps a matter of interest to all the media persons present over here. Number one, the fiscal framework. Number two, the capital expenditure by the centre. And a short comment on the major subsidies. Well, as was stated in the budget speech, for this year, this financial year, we are going to achieve the 3.9% fiscal deficit target. It has been done in a situation where we have not applied any expenditure cuts across departments. In fact, the revised estimates of the budget have been higher than what was contemplated at the beginning of the year, which is a first of its kind after many years. As far as the coming fiscal is concerned, the credibility and optimality arguments for adhering to the 3.5% of the GDP fiscal deficit have also been embedded in our exercise. We are going to adhere to it, and we have the past credibility of doing so. Even though it was difficult, we have taken a more national view and have honored our commitment to ensure that crowding out in the economy is minimized and domestic savings are available to the private sector for investments. Going forward, there will be, as far as the medium-term fiscal framework is concerned, it will be looked into because, as was mentioned in the budget speech, there is a debate about it's been 10 years old and it's performed well, the act, and how we move forward is something will be looked into. But I may just say that we will have to look at issues of debt sustainability in terms of both stock and flow dynamics, and also, as I said, the net effect on growth through the fine balance between crowding out and crowding in of savings. This new framework does not mean that we are going to do away with fiscal balancing. The whole thing has to be looked at perhaps from a more national point of view, where we also look at fiscal deficits of states and see the whole thing more in a more combined or a holistic manner. But that will be something for this committee to decide. The other feature which I just wanted to mention to all of you is regarding the percentage of capital expenditure, which we will sustain at around 12% of the GDP. And here, while you read the document, the budget documents, you should not just look at the direct capex of the central government, but you should also see at the capex transfer to the states from the center, which is basically, if you minus the revenue deficit and the ERD, the effective revenue deficit, you will get that figure. And you will find that this is a substantial figure. And last year we had attained around, or this year we are going to attain around 12%, and we are going to sustain it at that level. And the other interesting feature will be that the internal and extra budgetary resources, which is basically money coming in from the public enterprises and state-run units, that is going to be substantially increased. In the estimates of 16-17, major subsidies have been estimated around 2.3 lakh crores. That's food, fertilizer, and petroleum. We are taking a large number of measures basically to see that this amount which is being given to subsidy is efficiently spent, wastages are contained, and in this context, we will make all endeavors to see that as a percentage of GDP, these subsidies remain below 1.6% of the GDP. They were, in the year 2013-14, had crossed 2.15% of the GDP, and in the last 1.5 years, they have come down substantially, and which is a good thing. So, in conclusion, I may just say that the past performance from the expenditure management point of view and the quality of expenditure of the department of the government has been very good, and we will continue this process in the coming year with an emphasis on the agricultural sector, on equity, and on growth. Thank you.
Secretary, Economic Affairs.
Good afternoon. Overall, if I have to describe the budget, it's a transformative budget, it's a credible budget. I would like to highlight 3 quick points. One is that while maintaining the fiscal deficit for next year at 3.5%, we have also ensured that government borrowing requirement from the market is kept at a minimal level. It's 4.2 lakh crores of rupees. While deciding this number and while working on the fiscal deficit target, we have taken into consideration issues of debt sustainability, the medium-term and long-term debt sustainability of the government, the space that is available in the market for government borrowing so that we leave adequate resources for the private sector, and the emphasis and the necessity to ensure that government borrowings are done in a very non-disruptive manner without taking away a lot of resources from the market, and we should ensure that there is enough for the private sector requirement also. The second aspect of the budget to be noted is that it has taken a very balanced approach and it has focused on all the major challenges and the key problem areas which the economy, the macroeconomy today faces. Priority, therefore, has been given to issues in agriculture, rural development, infrastructure, spending on roads, railways, the social sector, and similar other areas. These are the major challenging areas today facing the economy, and they have been addressed very significantly. The third aspect I would like to highlight is that there are certain measures which is already, you must be aware, but just to put things in the perspective, I think there are certain structural reform measures. The first and foremost is the reforms in the transport sector, in the passenger segment. The entire system is being opening up, and there is a lot of opportunities available to improve the quality of transport for the public, the quality of road transport for the public, bring in new investments, create new jobs, and increase the overall efficiency of that sector. Targeted disbursement of subsidy by way of the Aadhaar legislation, again, is a huge game changer. And that will bring lot of, it will prevent lot of leakage and what I may call as a transmission loss, which takes place while the government subsidies and financial benefits are transmitted to the people who actually deserve it. There is the code on the financial resolution. There is a code on the resolution of the financial companies. The bankruptcy law and is already before the Parliament. Together with the bankruptcy law, this legislation, the code on resolution of financial firms, they will fill up a systemic vacuum that exists in our economy today with regard to resolution of companies and financial institutions which are in distress. They will provide a framework for quick resolution and for quick revival, quick resolution, or for quick liquidation as the case may be. But the focus obviously will be on revival. So there are a number of measures like that. I don't want to take more time on that. So the budget has also given a lot of focus on structural reforms. We need to continue with the pace of reforms if we have to go back to 8% plus in the next few years. Thank you.
Dr. Adia, the Revenue Secretary.
Thank you, sir. My first request to all the media persons is that please go through the annexure to the budget speech, because many of the changes we have made in the indirect tax side and extensive changes have been made on the indirect tax side, which affects the domestic competitiveness of Indian industry. Those changes are hidden in the annexure. So please go through the changes which are made in the indirect side in the annexure. The second thing is that you would be wondering that how is it that in spite of giving additional allocation of 15% on the plan side, and also meeting the responsibility of OROP and pay commission, how is it that the finance minister has achieved this 3.5% deficit? Let me tell you that the target for revenue, tax revenue, which we have set, are absolutely realistic. I'll just give you some numbers. The RE figure of the current year, the target achievement we expect is 17% as per the revised estimate. So we are expecting a growth rate of 17% in the current year, growth rate in the tax revenue. As against that, the target we have set for the next year is 11.76% only. So it is a very modest target of revenue collection that we have set for ourselves. So it is not a hyped up figure, number one. In terms of absolute number, we have set a target of 16.25 lakh crore for tax revenue. And we expect in indirect tax a growth rate of 10.8% and in direct tax 12.63%. That will be the growth rate expected. we are expecting a lower growth rate in corporate income tax, which will be 9.07%. In case of personal income tax, we are expecting an 18% growth rate in personal income tax. Now, these are some of the figures I wanted to give you. Couple of things. One is the income declaration scheme, what we call IDS. Now, that IDS is different from all other schemes in the past. As you know, in the past, there have been so many VDIS schemes in the past, but the most popular and the most yielding VDIS scheme was of 1997, wherein the government got about 9,000 crore plus as tax income. Now, this scheme is different from all other schemes in the sense that in other schemes, there was no extra amount taken apart from 30% tax rate. In 97 scheme, that said, if you are an individual, pay 30% and that's it. And if you are a company, pay 35% and that's it. But normally companies don't declare the black money, only the individual declares, so 30% was the rate taken. This time, it is different. We are saying 30% plus 7.5% penalty plus 7.5% Kisan surcharge. So a total of 45% is what they are supposed to pay. That is one. There is a limited window given for this particular IDS scheme, 1st June to 30th September. That is one. The second thing is I want to talk about is the uniform treatment for NPS and EPF and other schemes. Now, there are basically three types of schemes. One is superannuation fund scheme. The other is recognized provident fund, including EPF. And the third is NPS. The tax treatment for all three are different today. In case of superannuation fund, the employer's contribution up to 1 lakh is completely exempt at the time of withdrawal. So if the employer is only giving up to 1 lakh, then the entire thing is triple E, exempt, exempt, exempt. In case of recognized provident fund, it is without any limit. Employer as well as employee can contribute any amount, and the entire thing is triple E. That means ki even private individuals who are having a salary of 1 crore per month, they can join EPF, they can deduct 12 lakh rupees per month, and the entire thing will be tax-free for them when they withdraw. While in case of NPS, it was double ET, exempt, exempt, and tax at the time of withdrawal. We have tried to uniformize all these three schemes. So now what we are saying is, in case of all the three schemes, the contribution, in case of all the three schemes, the contribution of employer would be limited to 1.5 crore. That is one. So that is a limit we are putting. The second thing we are saying is, in case of all the three, 40% of the corpus, when you withdraw at the time of retirement, it would be tax exempt. The remaining 60%, if you put it in annuity, again it is tax exempt. But if you want to take it home, in case of NPS, of course, there is a condition that minimum 40% you are supposed to put it in the annuity. That much you are supposed to convert it into annuity. So if you want to put only 40% in annuity and withdraw 20%, then you have to pay tax on 20%. But 40% will be tax exempt in case of NPS. We are giving this new regime for EPF because EPF people have already deposited and they are expecting their income to be tax exempt at the time of withdrawal. So whatever is the existing corpus, we are not going to touch it. I want to clarify that. But from next year, if anybody, any rich employee also wants to contribute to EPF, his contribution of his employer will be only limited to 1.5% plus his own contribution, 1.5. And then the 40% only will be available as a tax exempt at the time of withdrawal. But this will apply only to new contribution made after 1/4/2016. This is what I want to make it clear. And of course, the last thing is about the relief to small taxpayer, how much it is coming to, the quantitative figures of that. Well, we have given two reliefs to small individual taxpayers up to income of 5 lakh. One is the tax rebate is increased from 2,000 to 3,000, 2,000 to 5,000, which is a straight-away benefit of 3,000 rupees reduction in their taxable income, in their tax liability. The second benefit of rental set-off, deduction for rental, this thing. Now that comes to from 24,000 to 60,000, which means 36,000 rupees extra they can deduct from their income and 10% of that, because all these people are in 10% slab, will be a benefit of 3,600 rupees. So in all, the small people will get a benefit of 6,600 rupees out of this dispensation which is set out. Thank you.
Secretary DFS, Mrs. Dugal.
Thank you, sir. Friends, in addition to what my colleagues have said, let me draw your attention to the focus on creating and strengthening the ecosystem for doing business, for bringing efficiencies, and for increasing the credit footprint that this budget brings. This includes the ease of exit for companies and financial institutions that are not viable any longer, or to support their revival. You're already familiar that the Insolvency and Banking Code is already in Parliament, and that covers the resolution as far as companies, LLPs, partnerships with unlimited liability, and individuals are concerned. This budget intends to bring in a fairly formidable agenda as far as resolution of financial firms are concerned, as far as illicit deposit-taking schemes are concerned, as far as strengthening of SARFAESI and the RDDB-FI, which is commonly known as the DRT Act, are concerned. It brings in certain ARC-related provisions which cover pass-through, which cover holding up to 100% by sponsors to bring in greater participation, which brings in non-institutional investors as well. Apart from all of this, we are looking at bank consolidation. We are looking at listing of insurance companies for greater participation, for greater transparency. And we have set for ourselves, in line with our commitment to increasing the credit footprint, very, very robust targets under the Mudra scheme. Thank you.
Secretary Disinvestment, Mr. Dheeraj Gupta.
Thank you, sir. So the very fact that the government has changed the name of this department from disinvestment to investment and public asset management, it underlines the new policy approach of the government for management of its investment in CPSEs. It is not merely disinvesting, it is really using, leveraging, and really efficiently using these resources for economic growth and fresh investment in the segments. Various linked issues which all lead to market capitalization of these CPSEs, there has to be a policy convergence, so that has been underlined in the statement of Honorable FM. There is a stress on strategic as well as minority stake sale. The policy and prescription mechanism for strategic disinvestment is already in public domain. It has been uploaded on the website. So that is now available, and it's a fully well laid out document which has been approved by FM. And as far as targets are concerned, we hope and we are very sure that we will be having best endeavor to achieve these targets. Thank you.
The Chief Economic Advisor, Mr. Subramanian.
I'll just make a couple of points because my colleagues have covered it. One, I think the point I would make is that, the commitment to macro stability is reflected both in the fact that the fiscal anchor and the monetary anchor are secure. The fiscal anchor by retaining the 3.5 and the monetary anchor because, the Monetary Policy Committee that's going to codify, the successes in inflation, that's also going to be given a legislative form. That's point number one. Point number two is, in deciding the target, there was this, tension between, credibility, consolidation, and the growth. And in some ways, I would argue that both targets have been completely met, the credibility target as well as the maintaining the growth target. because the deficit is going to be achieved with very minimal increases in the aggregate tax to GDP ratio, so that essentially, if you look at aggregate demand from the government, is actually going to be quite strong and not, in fact, come down to the extent reflected by the fiscal consolidation. So, in a sense, I would say the finance minister has pulled off a magic trick here by getting both consolidation and growth. And the last point I would say, of course, is that the JAM agenda has been really given a really great impetus with the Aadhaar bill, which means that the whole JAM agenda, not just today, but going forward, can really be, accelerated going forward.
I think the MOS, Mr. Jayant Sinha, will highlight one point.
Yes, I just wanted to highlight one point which has not come up so far in the discussions, but is very resources that they require to truly be world-class universities. This also is a game-changing step that we brought forward in this budget.
Yeah, we'll take some questions now. Let's start with 168. Sapna.
So there's a lot that's been spoken about consolidation in the banking sector. Apart from the fact, of course, that other quarters had a lot of expectation that the 25,000 crore, PSB recap might actually be stepped up. You have added a caveat there. So what's the game plan here in terms of consolidation? Because it's not an easy thing among the public sector space. And one quick question, sir, on the FRBM roadmap going forward. Committee will be looking into things. What do you have in mind as of now?
You see, as far as the consolidation agenda is concerned, as far as PSBs are concerned, the government has already said that it will bring down, in the long run, its equity. It's open to the idea of bringing it down to 52%. I made a specific reference in my speech to the IDBI, and that reference below 50% was in reference to the IDBI. I think the first and the immediate agenda is that we strengthen the banks. We strengthen them by recapitalization. What I have announced today is not the last word or the last amount as far as recapitalization is concerned. And therefore, be prepared, there'll be something more which will happen. There is some amount which is a carry forward of the current year, which is still to be spent. And thereafter, we are willing to look at consolidation. Consolidation among subsidiaries, consolidation of subsidiaries with principal bank, consolidation of weak bank with strong bank, subject to that overall 52% discipline that we've laid down for ourselves. Now, as far as the FRBM is concerned, both the Finance Secretary and the Chief Economic Advisor have just explained that we've carried on a big debate, and this was, in fact, I was glad that this dominated the center stage in the last couple of weeks. Revise the target. Now, as it turned out to be, because of various factors, we realized that even this year we could meet the target and also keep to the financial discipline itself. There were not two, but there were three different opinions. There were the purists who wanted the 3.5 to be strictly adhered to. There were those who said spend more. It doesn't make a difference if it's marginally altered. And there was a third view of people who said this year stick to 3.5. But at the same time, for the future, just review whether you should always have a figure or you should have a small range. Because economic circumstances globally keep on changing. And therefore, should we curtail growth because we've committed ourselves to a figure? Now, we haven't been able to form an opinion on the third issue. So all I have said is that while we stick to 3.5 this year, and it is eminently achievable, we look at the possibility by getting some experts to advise us. That's where it stands.
Yeah.
Hi, sir. I'm Shubham Batra from Cogensis. Sir, I have two questions. The first one
Everybody
is...
should ask only one question.
Okay, sir. The only question
Not
that I
two
have
in the
is-
garb of one.
Yeah, yeah. So, the question is, your fiscal prudence has widely been applauded by the markets. So how soon do you expect now the Reserve Bank of India to react with the rate cut?
Well, I think it's a good question, but why are you addressing it to me?
Sir, what is your expectation is what I'm asking.
Thank you.
Abhishek, yeah. Satya.
Conservative commentators are saying that this budget puts this government left of center and positions for the 2019 election.
I think this is a kind of definition in which conventional minds in the media get struck. This budget deals with the reality of India. And the reality of India is that in today's economic setup, there is a serious challenge, if not a distress, as far as the agrarian sector is concerned. And therefore, you have to address agriculture, you have to address rural infrastructure. At the same time, you have to address physical infrastructure, social sector commitments. And therefore, this budget is a combination of several things. Now, if I just seriatim count them for you, where would you put infrastructure spending, which is a record high? Priority being given to agriculture and to rural areas. Targeting of subsidies through a legislation which I intend to introduce in the almost immediately now. How would you then call a reform in the transport sector? The most unreformed sector. So it addresses an area, city after city doesn't have a bus service. And therefore you are allowing entrepreneurs to put their own vehicles on the road and using the concurrent power under the Constitution to amend the Motor Vehicles Act and nudging the states to implement the reform. Introducing FDI, several areas we made changes, but then this is a change we've made for storage, processing and sale of food products produced manufactured in India. So you link a very progressive FDI policy with the farm sector itself. Resolution of disputes, insolvency to resolution of banking distress issues, gas exploration, selecting universities, as Jayan just now mentioned, both in the private and the state sector, and developing 10 universities as globally competitive and creating an environment. Settlement of infrastructure disputes. Because all your stalled projects, so you've given a 3-point agenda besides the amendment to the Arbitration Act and the commercial courts. These are the next 3 agendas. I think this is one of the largest ever simplification of the tax laws. Presumptive taxation, salaried class has a very simple tax return. You are almost bringing business institutions below a turnover of 2 crores to that level. You are bringing bulk of the professionals to that level. And then taking a bold step on clearing the backlog of all your virtual table, the mess on the table as far as taxation is concerned, through various settlement schemes. Giving a boost to the housing sector. So how would each one of these from gas exploration fit into your definition of left or right? So this addresses the sectors which need to be addressed. And obviously rural India needs to be addressed the most.
Yeah, Shri.
सर आपने इलीगल डिपॉजिट स्कीम की बात की कि उसके लिए एक रेगुलेशन लाने की बात की है, चूंकि सेबी इलीगल डिपॉजिट स्कीम पे जो कर्व करने की बात की सर, सेबी रेगुलेशंस में 100 करोड़ के ऊपर ऑलरेडी जो CIS है उसके लिए रजिस्ट्रेशन है, तो क्या इस स्कीम में जो आप जो लॉ लाने की बात कर रहे हैं, मल्टी लेयर्ड जो स्कीम्स होती हैं, पॉन्जी स्कीम्स होती हैं, उनको भी कवर किया जाएगा? और
देखिए,
ये
इसमें ये जो लेजिस्लेटिव स्पेस है काफ़ी हद तक ऑक्यूपाइड थी। कई राज्यों के अपने कानून हैं, कुछ प्रकार की स्कीम्स है जिसको सेबी देखती है। अब जहां पॉन्जी स्कीम से इंटरस्टेट इंप्लीकेशंस है उसको कौन देखेगा? इसमें एक और बड़ा प्रश्न भी आता है कि ये राज्यों के दायरे में है कि केंद्र के दायरे में है। और इस पे जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट गए राज्य तो उन्होंने कहा आपके दायरे में है, जब केंद्र गया उन्होंने कहा आपके दायरे में भी है। तो इसलिए इस सारे पक्ष को एग्जामिन करने के बाद हमें लगा कि इसमें आज भी गैप्स हैं और उन गैप्स को पूरा करने के लिए एक ओवरराइडिंग सेंट्रल लेजिस्लेशन चाहिए। देखिए, अब वो स्पेसिफिक जब लेजिस्लेशन बनेगा कि कितनी ऑक्यूपाइड स्पेस को छोड़ना है और कितनी नई स्पेस ढूंढनी है, वो लेजिस्लेटिव ड्राफ्टिंग का एक विषय आएगा।
सर, मैं लक्ष्मण CNBC आवाज़ से यहाँ। सरकार बार बार दोहराती रही कि हम GST लागू करने वाले हैं और जल्दी लागू करेंगे, लेकिन बजट में GST की तरफ कदम बढ़ते हुए बहुत दिखा नहीं, चाहे वो सर्विस टैक्स का मामला हो या फिर एक्साइज ड्यूटी का मामला हो।
देखिए, GST संविधान संशोधन से लागू होगा और जितने भी हम टैक्सेशन डिसीजंस ले रहे हैं वो धीरे धीरे उस दिशा में कन्वर्ज कर रहे हैं, उसकी तैयारी हम रख रहे हैं। मतलब सर्विस टैक्स सडनली स्टैंडर्ड रेट की तरफ चला जाए ओवरनाइट, ये संभव नहीं है। तो इसलिए जितने भी छोटे छोटे स्टेप्स लिए गए हैं पिछले 2-3 वर्षों में, वो उस कन्वर्जेंस की दिशा में ही है।
या 50 दे या
सर, सौरभ, इंडिया टीवी से। मध्यम वर्ग को बड़ी उम्मीद थी कि इनकम टैक्स स्लैब में कुछ बदलाव किया जाएगा। आपने भी एक वक्त में वकालत की थी कि 1 लाख से 5 लाख तक टैक्स फ्री कर दिया जाना चाहिए। वो क्यों नहीं कर पाए और कब तक करेंगे?
देखिए, जो टैक्सेशन में प्रिजम्पटिव टैक्स के माध्यम से और टैक्सेशन प्रणाली की सरलता के माध्यम से छोटे और एक मध्य दर्जे के टैक्स पेयर को रिलीफ मिला है, उसकी दिशा बहुत अच्छी है इस बजट में। आप थोड़ा गहराई से इस प्रिजम्पटिव टैक्स को एनालाइज करेंगे, जो व्यावसायिक को भी और प्रोफेशनल्स को भी मिलता है, तो उसका रिलीफ जिसकी आप वकालत कर रहे हैं उस दर्जे से कहीं आगे निकल जाता है।
Yeah, 106.
Sir, Dheeraj Tiwari from the Economic Times. So you have in the budget allowed foreign investment in CPSEs from 26 to 49%. Would that also mean that we can see a strategic sale in a company like NTPC?
No, we have not said so. We have not said with regard.
No, what we have said is that now when there is an investment, it requires a prior approval of the government. Every time there is a foreign investment coming into a CPSU, which is going beyond 26%, it has to come to the government for clearance. So what the budget has announced is that that kind of clearances will not be required, and up to 49% foreign investment can automatically come into CPSEs in the permitted sectors.
Yeah, 34.
Yeah, Parsa from DNA. You have acknowledged that there is a global economic crisis, and your very generous allocations in the different sectors should stimulate domestic demand as such. But do you think that you will be able to keep the Indian economy immune from the external storms?
Well, I don't have to acknowledge that there is a global crisis. The whole world is acknowledging that. That's a reality. And obviously, Indian economy is integrated with the world, and therefore some areas of what's happening elsewhere in the world will impact on us. And therefore, there is a specific paragraph, if you see towards the initial part of the budget, which says, how do we build up firewalls that we are able to resist the impact of the global situation to the maximum and the best of our ability.
Yeah, Ruchi.
Sir, I'm Ruchi from ET Now. You've spoken about DBT on fertilizers, a pilot project that you'll start. Even the chief economic advisor in the survey said that it is the mega rich who are getting the subsidies, close to 1 lakh crores. You've spoken about legislations of subsidy targeting. Could you elaborate on that? What is this legislation going to really have?
You see, since this legislation is going to be introduced in the next couple of days in Parliament, I think Parliament has the first right to know about the legislation. All I can tell you is, to the extent that it is mentioned in my budget speech, that it keeps away from issues which arose in the context of the earlier Aadhaar issue. And the principal purpose of this legislation is that wherever monies are spent, either from the Consolidated Fund of India or from the state governments, then you can, in order to target that, you can make Aadhaar necessary. You will also ensure that the same person doesn't, the right man gets the benefit and the same person doesn't get the benefit several times over.
Yeah.
Sir, this is Surabhi from the Hindu Business Line. Sir, you in this budget you've announced 2 new cesses. So as we're moving towards GST, which is a single levy, does the introduction of these 2 new cesses?
You see, the finance minister has an onerous job. He has to spend more and still maintain 3.5. Therefore, he needs resources. And once the GST comes, obviously, the cesses will be subsumed. But till it hasn't come, resource mobilization is necessary if one is to spend more.
सर मैं आलोक प्रियदर्शी हूँ, जी बिजनेस है सर. सरकार ने इस बजट में अनाउंस किया है कि जनरल एंटी अवॉइडेंस रूल को 2017 से फिर लागू करेगी. 2013 में यूपीए सरकार भी इसको लेकर आई थी, लेकिन किन्हीं वजहों से वो लागू नहीं हो पाया, निवेशकों के डर से. अभी सरकार के पास ऐसा क्या ग्राउंड है जिसकी वजह से आप लोग सोच रहे हैं कि गार को लागू किया जा सकता है?
देखिए, इसके पीछे बाकी पूरे विश्व में ये एक आधार बन गया है कि अवॉइडेंस और इवेजन के बीच में डिवाइडिंग लाइन बहुत थिन है. अवॉइडेंस भी इवेजन होता है. और इन रूल्स के पीछे जो टैक्सेशन फिलॉसफी है वो यही है. अब इसके पीछे उस आधार जो है, उस आधार को कभी ना कभी भारत को स्वीकार करना पड़ेगा. There can't be premium on either avoidance or evasion.
Yeah, please.
Sir, I'm Ashutosh from Bloomberg TV India. Sir, you have hinted that there could be more announcement as far as the bank recapitalization amount is concerned. Now, if I refer to the economic survey, it has mentioned that the burden of recapitalization should be shared by the RBI also along with the government. So, could we see going forward something to that effect in the next financial year?
No, I can't tell you just now, but we'll certainly look at the wisdom of the chief economic advisor and his suggestions.
And ignore them mostly.
179 there.
Ritu Parna from CNBC TV 18, right to your right hand side top. Sir, you have done away with the distinction between plan and non-plan expenditure. So going forward, how do you ensure that you also synchronize this with how state budgets are also designed? If you can just tell us about that.
Mr. Watel will.
You see, this coming year will be the last year of the 12th five-year plan, and there's also no planning commission. We have the Niti Aayog. So there's been a lot of thinking which has been going on in the Ministry of Finance, and some groundwork has already been done, in which some committees have been formed to really see how, and this is really the CGA's office, the Controller General of Accounts, he'll be looking at this. He's piloting some committees. And I have also taken some meetings with the secretaries of the state finance, secretaries of states, where we have actually sensitize them to this fact that because they also do their accounts on this plan, non-plan basis, that now this whole scenario will change. And we have formed these joint committees, we'll be looking at it, and the finance minister has given us 1 year to really make this shift. So it's really 17, 18 where we'll be looking at this entire thing, and we'll have to work very closely with the Niti Aayog also, because there has to be an inbuilt system of planning of some sort, sectoral or otherwise, which has to be put in. So it's a more focus will come into this area, but some groundwork has already started.
Yeah.
Hi sir, I'm Pavan from Newsrise. If you could remember well, 2004 when Chidambaram had started talking about the consolidation of public sector banks, there was a voice of opposition from the BJP and few other parties. And then came 2008 crisis. So if you are in favor of consolidation of PSU banks, what has changed since then?
Well, I think the reality and the performance and the situation of the banks itself calls for action.
Yeah, please.
BBC News. I just want to ask about retrospective taxes. You've repeatedly said that there will be no retrospective taxes, yet Vodafone has recently got an income tax notice. Would you have mentioned something more in the budget? Did you want to tell foreign investors something more about this?
First of all, let's be very clear. I had announced when this new government took over in the very first budget that this government will neither tax retrospectively nor issue any fresh assessment, any fresh notices with regard to those bills till a committee has cleared it. If there is a pre-existing assessment order, it doesn't disappear. And therefore, the assessing officer has to deal with the reality of that pre-existing assessment order. I had hoped that some of these disputes could be settled through the judicial tribunals or courts in the meanwhile. Many have been. Very few remain. The government has shown its keenness to even clean that aspect up. And therefore, I have taken one more step in that direction. And that step has a good rationale behind it. Even under the old retrospective laws, for this government is a legacy issue, since the assessee says, I was taken by surprise by retrospective legislation, there's a rationale not to have penalty and interest. So the law itself provides for a settlement on payment of principal, those who want to avail of that cause. So this is one extra step that I have taken in order to clean up the legacy.
Yeah, Geeta.
Geeta Mohan from NewsX, sir. You, in your speech, said that the political environment has unsupported. Now, when it comes to reforms agenda, we see the opposition has stalled quite a few reform bills. And I asked this because you spoke about cess and you said that it will be subsumed when GST is in place. But the most criticism that has come today is with regards to the cesses that have been imposed by the government, calling it a cess government.
Well, I've been able to understand the question. Governments survive on revenue. If those who coin phrases of this kind can tell me an alternate methodology of spending more without charging taxpayers. So I'll be very grateful if I am educated on that aspect of governance.
Hi sir, my name is Aftab, I'm from Newsrise. I just wanted to know two things, the government's target for growth for the next fiscal and government's oil price assumption for the next fiscal.
Well, I am not moving on any assumption. As far as the growth targets are concerned, the economic survey has already referred to them.
Yeah.
Sir, Prashant Mukherjee from New Indian Express newspaper. Yes, sir. Sir, you have changed the name of the Department of Disinvestment. So, is it? Don't you see? Is it as a sign of a failure since the Department of Disinvestment has never met its target, and you in your last year's budget have increased substantially your target for disinvestment?
First of all,
is it the reason that you have not mentioned any target for this year as well?
You see, the target is there in the documents. You read them carefully. in the last 21 months, we've achieved a better track record on divestment in terms of quantum than any government in the past. Now, we couldn't achieve our target, obviously, because the markets were very volatile. And therefore, if we were meeting our fiscal deficit targets even otherwise, I don't think there is any well-advised policy that we must sell when the markets are low or markets are volatile. Now, as far as changing the name is concerned, what the Secretary Disinvestment has already explained to you, it's management of government investments. And management of government investments really means it's a money belonging to the government or the people of India. Whether we must have 80% equity in a company or 70% equity in a company, or we must have 2 new highways, both are investments on behalf of the people of India. So instead of having 80% investment in a company, I have 70% shares, and in the process, if I can have 2 new highways, it's a matter of policy. So it's management of the government investment.
We'll take last 2 questions, 81 and 161.
Hello, sir. I have 2 questions. One, how much have you set aside?
One question, please.
How much have you set aside for 7th Pay Commission payout? And you have budgeted about 99,000 crore from Spectrum auction. If that doesn't materialize, how challenging will it be for you to meet 3.5%
Well,
of the
I
fiscal
can't
deficit?
answer hypothetical situations. If you see the TRAI recommendation, they have foreseen a bonanza of something like 5 lakh crores, of which we get 25% in the first year. Well, I have budgeted on a far more modest estimate.
What about 7th Pay Commission payout?
Well, we factored in significant part of the 7th Pay Commission. I've said in my speech itself, the Secretaries Committee will decide the eventual amount of liability that falls in the government, but a very significant part of it we've already factored in.
Yeah, 161.
So Anvesha from Bloomberg TV, just wanted to know how much are you expecting to collect from the domestic black money compliance in this fiscal?
Well, let me clarify. When we fixed the fiscal deficit targets and various questions like spectrum, disinvestment, and oil prices, these are the various variables which are raised. All the 4 schemes which I have announced, the taxation schemes, number 1, disclosure of income which has escaped assessment or disclosure, the direct tax dispute settlement scheme, the indirect tax dispute settlement scheme, these are both at the first appellate level, and the retrospective tax, payment of principal amount of tax. In the quantum of revenue that we anticipate, we haven't factored in significantly into our revenues. So whatever we are able to realize from these 4 schemes, I think will make the management of accounts somewhat simpler.
That's really the last question. Yeah. Yes, speaking.
Shams from Urdu Media. सब माइनॉरिटी से रिलेटेड आपका जो आपने बहुत थोड़ा सा अपनी स्पीच में किया, तो ज़रा उसको एलेबरेट करेंगे कि इस स्कॉलरशिप में कितना बढ़ाया। और एक खबर ये आई थी कि हज अफेयर्स को भी माइनॉरिटी इसमें मिनिस्ट्री में लाएंगे, तो क्या उसके लिए बजट में कुछ प्रावधान है?
ऐसा है कि जो एग्जिस्टिंग योजनाएं हैं स्कॉलरशिप्स की, उस्ताद स्कीम प्लस दूसरी जो स्कीम्स हैं, उन सब के लिए जो इस साल का प्रोजेक्टेड एक्सपेंडिचर है उसको बजट में प्रोवाइड किया गया है। ये मैंने अपनी बजट स्पीच में भी कहा और जो अकाउंट्स बजट डॉक्यूमेंट्स में है उसमें भी ये है। थैंक यू।
Thank you, sir. And friends, kindly join for tea on the 4th floor.